The silence in the human embassy was wrong. Velthara knew this place should be full of noise. Humans were always busy, always talking, always moving. Now the halls echoed with only the soft hum of machines. She walked through the empty rooms on Nexus Prime, her blue-scaled fingers touching walls that still held the warmth of recent life. Coffee cups sat half-empty on desks. Computer screens showed work left unfinished. A child's drawing hung on one wall showing stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. "When did they leave?" she asked the security guard behind her. 3 months ago, Speaker Velthara," the young Centauri replied. "All at once. Every human in the galaxy just vanished overnight." Velthara stopped at Ambassador Sarah Chen's office. Sarah's chair was still pushed back from her desk as if she had just stepped away for a moment. A photo showed Sarah with her family on Earth, all of them smiling. The ambassador's last message was still on her screen. "Trade route adjustment approved. We'll coordinate with shipping partners next week." Nothing about leaving. Nothing about saying goodbye. "Have we checked their homeworlds?" Velthara asked. "Yes, Speaker. All empty. No bodies, no signs of fighting. They just left everything behind." The guard paused. "Even their pets are gone." Velthara felt a chill. Humans loved their pets more than most species loved their own children. They would never abandon them. She walked to the embassy's main hall where the other council members waited. 12 different alien species stood in a circle, their various forms creating strange shadows under the bright lights. Some had scales like her. Others had fur or smooth skin or metallic shells. But they all shared the same expression, confusion mixed with opportunity. Zethkar spoke first. His red eyes gleamed in his reptilian face. "The humans have clearly abandoned their territory. Under council law, empty space belongs to whoever can claim it." "They didn't abandon anything," Velthara said. "They left. What's the difference?" asked Minister Grokha, her insect voice clicking. "Empty is empty. Their worlds have good mining potential. The difference," Velthara said slowly, "is that we don't know why they left." Commander Thexal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Who cares why? They're gone. That means their technology, their worlds, their trade routes are all free for the taking." The other council members nodded. Velthara saw greed in their eyes. She had seen this look before, when weak species were conquered and their resources divided up. But humans weren't weak. They had been part of the council for 200 years. They controlled some of the best trade routes in the galaxy. Their technology was advanced, even if they kept the best parts to themselves. Most importantly, humans were stubborn. They never gave up on anything they cared about. So why would they give up on everything? "I propose we vote," Zethkar said. "All in favor of opening former human territory for colonization?" 10 hands went up. Only Velthara kept hers down. Motion passed. Zethkar grinned, showing sharp teeth. "We'll divide their space fairly among council members." "This is a mistake," Velthara said. "The only mistake," said Minister Grokha, "would be letting good worlds sit empty while our people need resources." The meeting ended with species already arguing over which human worlds they wanted. Velthara stayed behind as the others left, making their plans and deals. She walked back to Sarah's office and sat in the ambassador's chair. The human had been a good friend. They had worked together on dozens of trade agreements and peace treaties. Sarah was smart, careful, and always thought 3 steps ahead. Velthara turned on Sarah's computer. Maybe there were clues in the files. Most of the data was normal. Trade reports, meeting notes, family messages. But buried deep in the system, she found something strange. A folder marked LRP that required special access codes. She tried Sarah's birthday. Wrong. She tried Sarah's daughter's name. Wrong. Then she tried something Sarah had said once during a late night of negotiations. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The folder opened. Inside were thousands of files, plans, protocols, evacuation routes, supply caches, all organized under a single title: Long Road Protocol, Emergency Departure Procedures. Velthara's blood went cold. The humans had been planning this for decades. Maybe longer. She read deeper. The files showed backup plans for backup plans. Every human colony had secret supply depots. Every human ship had hidden destinations programmed into their computers. Every human family had emergency bags packed and ready. But why? What had they been afraid of? She found her answer in a file marked Council Assessment. Classification Ultra Secret. The report was written by Human Intelligence Services. It analyzed every council species, their military strength, their economic needs, their historical behavior toward weaker civilizations. The conclusion was brutal in its honesty. The council tolerates humanity because we are useful. We provide technology, trade networks, and diplomatic solutions they cannot achieve alone. However, if humanity ever showed weakness or became unavailable, 73% of council species would immediately move to claim our territory and resources. Only the Centauri and perhaps the Cathani would respect our sovereignty. Recommendation: prepare for the possibility that we may need to leave council space entirely. Develop protocols for rapid, complete evacuation. Ensure no human assets fall into potentially hostile hands. Velthara read the date on the report. It was written 150 years ago. The humans had been watching the council for over a century, preparing for the day when their allies would become their enemies. And somehow they had known that day was coming. Her personal communicator buzzed. It was her aide. "Speaker, we're receiving reports from the first survey team sent to human space." "What kind of reports?" "Strange ones, ma'am. The human worlds are empty, but their defense systems are still active. Our ships are being warned away from certain areas. The automated systems seem to be working perfectly, even without any humans to maintain them." Velthara closed Sarah's computer. Outside the embassy windows, she could see ships preparing to leave for human space. Council species ready to claim their prizes. But humans didn't leave prizes behind. They were too smart, too careful, too suspicious of everyone else's motives. If they had left, it was for a reason. And if they had left their defense systems running, it meant they planned to come back. Velthara thought about the empty coffee cups and unfinished work, about the pets that had vanished along with their owners, about plans that had been in place for over a century. The humans hadn't abandoned anything. They had simply moved to the next phase of a very long game. She looked at the photo of Sarah's family one more time. In the picture, Sarah's young daughter was holding a sign that read, "Welcome to Earth." But now Velthara noticed something else. In the background, barely visible, was another sign. It read, "We'll be back." The council thought they were claiming empty territory. But Velthara had a terrible feeling they were walking into a trap that had been set before some of them were even born. And the humans were somewhere out there, watching, waiting, and counting the days until the council showed their true nature. The harvest was about to begin, but Velthara wondered who would really be getting harvested in the end. 6 months had passed since the humans vanished. Zethkar stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching mining equipment tear into what used to be New Kansas. The human farming world was rich in rare metals buried beneath its fertile soil. "How much have we extracted?" he asked his mining chief. 12 tons of trilithium so far, General." The humans had barely touched the deep deposits. The officer's scales glowed with satisfaction. These farms were sitting on a fortune. Zethkar nodded. The humans had been fools to waste such valuable worlds on growing food. Food could be grown anywhere. Trilithium was rare and precious. Behind them, massive machines ripped up wheat fields and cornfields. The humans had left their crops to rot. "Now those fields were becoming open pit mines, sir," called his communications officer. "Message from the hegemony fleet at Kepler Station. Put it through." The blue face of Admiral Vexith appeared on screen. "Zethkar, we're having problems with the manufacturing equipment here. The human machines won't respond to our technicians." "What do you mean they won't respond?" "I mean they won't turn on. The computers recognize our people as non-human and shut down. We're locked out of everything." Zethkar frowned. "Bring in your best hackers. Break the security codes. We tried that. The moment we start hacking, the entire system wipes itself clean. We've lost 3 factories so far." The screen went dark. Zethkar stared at the empty display. The human machines were still protecting themselves, even with no humans around to give orders. "General," his science officer called out, "you should see this." She led him to a monitoring station. "We're picking up energy readings from the edge of human space. Big ones. What kind of energy?" "Unknown. Our sensors can't get a clear reading. It's like something is blocking our scans." Zethkar studied the data. Strange pulses came from the direction of Earth and the core human worlds. The readings didn't match any known technology. "Send a probe to investigate." "Sir, we've sent 3 probes. None of them came back." "Destroyed?" "No, sir. They just stopped transmitting once they reached the energy field. It's like they vanished." Zethkar turned back to the window. Below, his machines continued tearing up human farms. But now the work felt less like victory and more like vandalism. On the other side of the galaxy, Velthara was having her own problems. She had been investigating a human research station in the Vega system. The place was enormous, built into an asteroid field with laboratories and living quarters for thousands of people, all empty, except for one small section that her security team had found sealed behind multiple locks. "It's a medical bay," reported Captain Mertok. "Life support is active. There's someone inside." Velthara felt her heart skip. "A human?" Scanners say yes. "A child." They cut through the locks carefully. Inside the medical bay, a young human boy floated in a stasis pod. The machine beeped softly, monitoring his life signs. He looked maybe 10 years old, with dark hair and pale skin. Why would they leave a child behind? Captain Mertok wondered. Velthara checked the stasis pod's computer. According to the records, the boy's name was Marcus Chen, Sarah Chen's son. "Wake him up," she ordered. The stasis pod hissed as it opened. The boy's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused, then frightened as he saw the alien faces around him. Where is my mom?" he asked in a small voice. "She's gone," Velthara said gently. "All the humans are gone." "We found you here alone." Marcus sat up slowly. He looked around the empty station through the windows. "How long?" 6 months. The boy nodded like this wasn't surprising news. "They had to leave. The council was going to take everything. What do you mean?" Marcus looked at her with eyes that seemed too old for his face. "Mom showed me the reports. The council species were waiting for humans to show weakness, so humans decided to leave before that happened. But why leave you? I volunteered to stay. Someone had to watch. Someone had to remember." Marcus stood up, steadier than a boy his age should be after months in stasis. "And someone had to deliver the message when the time came." "What message?" Marcus smiled, and for a moment he looked like a normal child. But then his expression grew serious again. "That humans aren't gone. They're just somewhere else now. Somewhere the council can't reach them. Yet." Velthara felt cold. "Where did they go?" "I don't know exactly. Mom called it the long road. She said humans had been preparing for this journey for a very long time, since before the council even existed." That night, Velthara took Marcus back to Nexus Prime. She gave him a room in the Centauri embassy and tried to make him comfortable. But the boy asked strange questions. "Has the council started fighting over human worlds yet?" "Some disagreements," Velthara admitted. "And the trade routes? Are they still working?" "There have been some delays." Marcus nodded knowingly. "It will get worse. Humans were doing a lot of things the council didn't notice. Important things." "What kind of things?" "You'll see." As if summoned by his words, Velthara's communicator buzzed with urgent messages. Problems were starting all over the galaxy. The hegemony reported that their new manufacturing centers couldn't produce the advanced components they needed. Human-made machines required specific materials that were only available from other human-controlled sources. The collective found that their captured research stations contained incomplete data. The humans had been sharing scientific information between their labs, but each facility only held pieces of the larger puzzle. Most worrying, ships were reporting problems with long-distance communication. Human relay stations had been boosting signals across the galaxy for decades. Without them, messages took weeks instead of hours to travel between distant worlds. The humans weren't just another species, Marcus explained when Velthara told him about the problems. They were the glue holding everything together. Why didn't the council realize this? Because humans wanted it that way. They made themselves useful but not obvious, like the wiring in a building. You don't notice it until the power goes out. Velthara studied the boy. He spoke like someone much older than 10. "How do you know all this?" "Mom taught me, and the others prepared me before they left. Someone had to remember how things really worked." "The others?" Marcus looked out the window at the stars. "There are more humans still in this galaxy, hidden, watching, making sure the transition goes according to plan." "What transition?" "The one where the council learns to take care of itself. Or fails trying." That night, Velthara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Marcus's words and the problems spreading across the galaxy. The council had thought they were claiming prizes from the humans. But maybe they had just inherited an enormous mess that humans had been quietly managing for centuries. The next morning brought worse news. A council expedition had tried to penetrate deeper into human space, toward the core worlds where the energy readings were strongest. They had made it as far as the outer defenses of the Sol system before their ships simply stopped responding. The last transmission was from the expedition leader, Admiral Korthak of the Vorthak fleet. His voice was filled with wonder and terror. By the old gods, what have they become? Then silence. Marcus heard the report and nodded sadly. They're not ready to see. Not yet. See what? What humans turned into when they took the long road. The boy looked at Velthara with ancient eyes. What any species can become if they're willing to pay the price. What price? Letting go of what you were to become what you could be. Outside the embassy, council ships continued to strip human worlds of their resources. But Velthara had the growing feeling that they were stealing from something much larger and more dangerous than they understood. The humans had left their territory behind like a snake shedding its skin. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, that snake was growing into something completely new, something that still remembered every insult, every betrayal, and every act of greed committed against the species they used to be. The harvest was proceeding as planned. But Marcus's presence reminded Velthara that humans always planned much further ahead than anyone else expected, and their plans were just beginning. 1 year after the humans vanished, the galaxy was falling apart. Velthara sat in the council emergency session watching her fellow leaders argue over problems that seemed to multiply each day. The grand chamber that once hosted peaceful debates now echoed with angry voices and desperate demands. The trade route to the Kethani system has collapsed completely, reported Minister Graka. Her insect voice was higher than usual, stressed. My people are running out of medical supplies. Then find another route, snapped Zethkar. But his scales had lost their healthy glow. His own empire was struggling, there is no other route. Graka's mandibles clicked furiously. The humans built that network over centuries. They connected systems that shouldn't be connected. Without their relay stations, we can't maintain the signal strength. Commander Thexal's metallic face showed dents from recent stress. My manufacturing worlds need rare minerals from the outer rim. The shipping companies say they can't guarantee delivery anymore. Too many pirates on the broken trade routes. Velthara looked around the room. Half the original council members were missing. Some had withdrawn from the galactic community entirely, focusing on their own survival. Others had sent representatives instead of coming themselves, too busy dealing with crises at home. How bad is it? She asked quietly. Minister Graka consulted her tablet. Food production is down 40% across the galaxy. Medical supplies are scarce everywhere except the core worlds. 3 minor wars have started over shipping routes, and the pirate attacks are getting worse every week. Pirates have always existed, Zethkar said, not like this. Before human patrol ships kept them in check. Their trade networks were too efficient to make piracy profitable. Now the pirates know exactly where to hit for maximum gain. Velthara thought about Marcus, the human boy she had been caring for. He had warned her this would happen. Humans hadn't just been another council species. They had been the invisible foundation holding everything together. What about the expedition reports from human space? She asked. The room fell silent. 3 expeditions had been sent to investigate the energy readings in the human core worlds. Only one had returned. Admiral Korthak had led the first expedition. His ships had reached the outer edge of the Sol system before going silent. The second expedition found his fleet drifting empty in space. No crew, no bodies, no signs of violence. Just empty ships with all their systems functioning normally. The third expedition had returned, but the crews were changed. They spoke in whispers about things they couldn't fully describe. Structures that existed in multiple dimensions. Technology that responded to thought instead of controls. And humans who were no longer quite human anymore. The survivors keep talking about transcendence, said Captain Yexapol, who had led the third expedition. They say humans didn't leave our reality. They expanded into something bigger. That's impossible, Zethkar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Captain Yexapol's eyes were distant. We always wondered why humans advanced so quickly after joining the council. Why their technology was always just a little ahead of ours. Maybe they were preparing for something we couldn't imagine. Velthara's communicator buzzed. It was an urgent message from her aide. Speaker, you need to return to the embassy immediately. The human boy wants to speak with you. He says it's time. She excused herself from the failing council session and hurried back to Nexus Prime. She found Marcus in the garden behind the Centauri embassy. He was taller now, though only a year had passed. His eyes held knowledge that no child should possess. "Hello, Velthara," he said without turning around. "Are they ready to listen yet?" "Ready for what?" Marcus turned to face her. His human features were subtly different, more refined somehow, for the truth about what humans became, and what the Council chose when they decided to steal from us. "We didn't steal. We claimed abandoned territory." Marcus smiled sadly. "Is that what you call it? Taking everything humans built and using it for your own gain without permission?" Velthara sat down beside him. Over the past year she had grown fond of this strange boy. But she also feared him. He was becoming something that wasn't entirely human anymore. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Humans knew this day would come," Marcus began. Not the exact timing, but the inevitability. The Council species would eventually show their true nature when they thought humans were weak or absent. So the departure was a test? Partly, but mostly it was evolution. Marcus looked up at the stars. Humans reached a point where they could take the next step. But they had to choose, stay and be limited by physical reality, or leave and become something more. More what? More than flesh and bone. More than ships and planets. More than the small thinking that divides the galaxy into us and them. Velthara felt a chill. Where are they now? Everywhere, nowhere, in between dimensions. In the spaces between thoughts. They exist on levels of reality that most species can't even perceive. Marcus's eyes glowed slightly. But they still care about this reality. They still watch. And what do they see? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. They see species that learned nothing from their absence. The Council took everything humans left behind and used it for selfish gain. You let the galaxy fall apart rather than work together to fix it. Velthara thought about the emergency session, the failed trade routes, the wars breaking out across known space. How do we fix it? You can't, not alone, not without help. Marcus stood up, and for a moment he seemed to flicker as if he existed in more than one place at once. But humans might be willing to help. For a price. What price? Acknowledgement, apology, and proof that the Council has learned from its mistakes. Before Velthara could ask more questions, alarms began sounding across Nexus Prime. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system. Not normal ships, something else entirely. Velthara and Marcus rushed to the embassy's observation deck. In the distance, impossible structures hung in space. They looked like ships but moved like living things. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "They're beautiful," Velthara whispered. "They're human," Marcus said, "or what humans chose to become." The structures didn't approach. They simply waited at the edge of the system, clearly visible but making no threatening moves. "What do they want?" "To give the Council one chance," Marcus said. His voice was changing, becoming more resonant. 7 days to decide what kind of civilization you want to be. And if we choose wrong? Marcus looked at her with eyes that now clearly belonged to something beyond human. "Then humans will make the choice for you." Velthara's communicator exploded with frantic calls from the Council. Ships were appearing at the edge of every major system in the galaxy, the same impossible structures waiting and watching. "How do we contact them?" she asked. "You already are." Marcus gestured to himself. "I'm the bridge between what humans were and what they became. Through me, they can speak to you. Through me, you can speak to them. And what should we say? The truth. About what you took. About why you took it. About what you're willing to do to make it right." Velthara looked out at the strange ships hanging in space like geometric angels. A year ago, the Council had thought they were claiming empty territory from a departed species. Now she realized they had been stealing from something vast and powerful and patient, something that had been watching them all along, waiting to see what they would do with the test they had been given. "Marcus," she said quietly, "are the humans angry?" The boy, who was no longer quite a boy, considered the question. "They're disappointed. They hoped the Council would prove worthy of true partnership. Instead, you proved you were exactly what they always feared you were, which is scavengers, taking what others built and using it for selfish purposes without thought for the consequences." Velthara felt shame burning in her chest. "How do we prove we're better than that?" "By choosing to be better. By putting the galaxy's needs ahead of your own. By working together instead of competing for scraps." The strange ships continued their silent vigil. Across the galaxy, other council leaders were probably asking the same questions, facing the same choice. 7 days to prove they deserved to share the galaxy with beings who had transcended the need for greed and conflict. 7 days to show that the council could evolve too, or face the judgment of a species that had moved far beyond the need for war to enforce their will. Marcus smiled, and in that smile Velthara saw both forgiveness and warning. "The clock is ticking," he said. "What will you choose?" 18 months after the humans vanished, the galactic civilization was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. Zethkar stood in what used to be his throne room on the Vorthak homeworld, watching his empire crumble through the news reports. 3 of his outer colonies had declared independence. 2 more had been abandoned entirely as supply lines failed. His proud fleet was mostly grounded, unable to get the fuel and spare parts they needed. "General," his aide reported, "the mining operations on New Kansas are shutting down. The equipment keeps breaking and we can't get replacement parts." "What about the human technology we captured? It only works for a few weeks, then fails. Our engineers think the machines are programmed to self-destruct if they don't receive regular updates from human systems." Zethkar snarled in frustration. Even dead and gone, the humans were still finding ways to spite him. But they weren't dead, were they? Those impossible ships hanging at the edge of every system proved that. In the hegemony core worlds, Admiral Vexith faced similar problems. The manufacturing centers they had claimed from humans were now completely useless. Every attempt to reverse engineer the technology ended in failure. Worse, the economic collapse was causing riots on his most important planets. "Sir," his economic advisor reported, "food riots have broken out on 3 more worlds. The agricultural systems we took from humans produced well for the first few months, but the soil is failing now." "Why?" "The human agricultural techniques were more complex than we realized. They had bacteria and microorganisms in the soil that we didn't know about. Without those, the crops are dying." Admiral Vexith stared at the report. The humans hadn't just grown food. They had engineered entire ecosystems that worked together in ways the hegemony didn't understand. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, Velthara tried to hold emergency council sessions. But fewer representatives came each time. Some species were too busy dealing with internal collapse to attend galactic meetings. Others had simply given up on the council entirely. "We need to discuss the human ultimatum," she said to the 6 representatives who had bothered to show up. "What's to discuss?" Commander Thexal's metallic voice was bitter. "They want us to admit we were thieves and return everything we took. But we can't return what we've already destroyed or used up." "Then what do you suggest?" "We fight," Zethkar said. His image appeared on the communication screen from his homeworld. "We still have ships, weapons. Maybe these evolved humans aren't as powerful as they want us to think." "With what ships?" asked Minister Grokha. "Half our fleets are grounded because we can't maintain them without human-supplied parts. Then we build new ones. With what resources?" "The trade networks are broken. The manufacturing centers don't work, and the pirates are getting bolder every day." Velthara listened to them argue and felt despair growing in her hearts. The council was acting exactly like the humans had predicted. When faced with consequences for their actions, they chose blame and aggression instead of self-reflection. That evening, she visited Marcus in his room at the embassy. The boy was standing at the window, watching the strange ships that hung motionless in space around Nexus Prime. "How many days are left?" she asked. 3, Marcus said without turning around. He was definitely taller now and his voice had deepened, growing faster than any normal human child should. "What will happen if the council doesn't comply? Humans will do what they should have done centuries ago. They'll stop pretending that other species can be trusted to share the galaxy responsibly." "What does that mean?" Marcus finally turned to face her. His features were becoming more angular, more refined, beautiful in an almost alien way. "It means humans will take direct control of galactic civilization. For everyone's own good." Velthara felt cold. "That sounds like tyranny." "Is it tyranny when parents take dangerous toys away from children who are hurting themselves and others?" "We're not children." Marcus tilted his head, considering. "Aren't you? What would you call species that destroy the gifts they're given and fight over the pieces?" Before Velthara could answer, her communicator buzzed with urgent alerts. Something was happening at the edge of the system. They rushed to the embassy's main communication center. The screen showed chaos. A second council expedition had tried to approach the human ships. This one had been authorized by Zethkar and the War faction, hoping to learn the humans' weaknesses. But something had gone wrong. The expedition ships had made it halfway to the human vessels before they simply stopped. Not destroyed, not disabled. They hung in space, completely motionless, as if frozen in time. "Are the crews dead?" Velthara asked the communication officer. "No, ma'am. We're receiving signals from them." "But..." The officer looked confused. "They're not making sense. Put it through." The voice of Admiral Korthak filled the room, but he sounded different, calmer, more peaceful than Velthara had ever heard him. "This is Admiral Korthak to Nexus Prime Control. We are fine. Better than fine. We understand now." "Understand what?" demanded Zethkar's voice over the communication link. "What we could become. What we should become. The humans have shown us." Korthak's voice trailed off in wonder. "There's so much more than this small existence we've been living." "Admiral, return to base immediately," Zethkar ordered. "No, we're staying. We need to learn. We need to grow." To evolve like they did, the transmission cut off. On the screens, Velthara could see the expedition ships beginning to change. Their hulls were shifting, taking on the same impossible geometry as the human vessels. The crews were choosing to stay with their former enemies instead of returning home. What did the humans do to them? Someone whispered. Marcus answered quietly. They showed them what peace feels like. What it's like to exist without fear, without greed, without the constant need to fight for survival. "That's mind control," Zethkar snarled over the communicator. "No," Marcus said. "It's perspective." The crews experienced what life is like when you don't have to worry about resources or territory or status, when your existence isn't based on taking from others. And they don't want to come back to this, Velthara realized. Would you? If someone showed you a life without stress, without conflict, without the need to constantly prove your worth through dominance over others? Velthara thought about her own life. Constant negotiations, constant worry about trade agreements and territorial disputes, always watching for threats from other species, always planning for the next crisis. What would it be like to simply exist without all that weight? "Is that what humans became?" she asked. "Beings without those needs?" "Beings who evolved beyond those needs," Marcus corrected. They didn't lose the ability to feel or care. They just stopped being driven by primitive survival instincts. And now they want to force that evolution on everyone else? Marcus's expression grew sad. They want to save everyone else from destroying themselves. The Council has proven that given freedom, you'll use it to steal, fight, and blame each other while your civilization falls apart. Velthara looked at the screen showing the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Food riots, failed governments, collapsing trade networks, wars breaking out over resources. The humans had been gone for only 18 months, and already the galactic community was tearing itself apart. How do we prove we deserve another chance? By making different choices. By putting cooperation ahead of competition. By thinking about the good of all instead of the advantage of your own species. And if we can't? Marcus looked out at the human ships now joined by the converted council vessels. Then humans will make those choices for you. They'll establish order, ensure fair distribution of resources, stop the wars. You'll have peace and prosperity, but not freedom. You'll have the freedom children have under good parents, the freedom to grow and learn and become better, but not the freedom to harm others or yourselves. Velthara stared at the impossible ships hanging in space. 2 days left before the human ultimatum expired. 2 days to convince the Council to abandon their nature and embrace cooperation over conquest. Looking at the emergency reports still flooding in from across the galaxy, she wondered if that was even possible. The humans had evolved beyond the need for war and greed. But had the rest of the galaxy? Or were they all still primitive creatures who would always choose conflict when cooperation became difficult? Marcus touched her arm gently. "There's still time," he said, "but not much." Outside, the human ships waited with infinite patience. They had already transcended time and space. They could wait as long as necessary for the Council to make their choice. The question was whether the Council would choose wisdom or repeat the same mistakes that had brought them to this moment of judgment. With 2 days left, Velthara began to fear she already knew the answer. 2 years after the humans vanished, Velthara stood before what remained of the Galactic Council for the last time. Only 7 species had representatives present. The others had either withdrawn from galactic affairs or simply collapsed entirely. The council chamber looked pathetic now. Half the seats were empty. The remaining representatives looked tired and desperate. Outside the windows, the impossible human ships hung in space like geometric angels, waiting for an answer to their ultimatum. "We have to give them what they want," Velthara said. "Return everything we took from human space and formally apologize for our actions." "Apologize for what?" Zethkar's hologram flickered. Even his image looked smaller now. His empire had shrunk to just his home system. "For claiming empty territory?" "For stealing," said Marcus. The boy stood behind Velthara's chair. He was nearly as tall as an adult now, despite only 2 years passing. His human features had become perfect, almost ethereal. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that touched something deep in the listeners' minds. "You took what humans built and used it for your own gain without permission. You stripped their worlds of resources. You tried to profit from their absence. That's theft, regardless of what laws you wrote to justify it." Commander Thexal's metallic voice was bitter. Easy words from someone who wasn't starving when the trade networks collapsed. "The networks collapsed because you broke them," Marcus replied calmly. "Humans built systems that required cooperation and trust. When you replaced cooperation with exploitation, the systems failed. So what do you want from us?" Minister Grucka asked. Her insect voice buzzed with exhaustion. Marcus stepped forward. As he moved, the air around him seemed to shimmer slightly. "Acknowledgement that you were wrong. Commitment to different behavior. And proof that you can work together instead of fighting over scraps. And if we refuse, then humans will fix the galaxy without your input." As if summoned by his words, the lights in the chamber dimmed. The walls became transparent, showing the space around Nexus Prime. The human ships had moved closer. They were massive, beautiful, and clearly beyond anything the Council could understand or resist. "How many ships do they have?" someone whispered. "All of them," Marcus said. "Every human ship ever built, evolved beyond physical limitations. Plus the crews of Council ships who chose to join them rather than return to this chaos." Velthara thought about Admiral Korthak, and the others who had seen what humanity offered and decided they preferred it to their old lives. Ships full of her own people were now part of the human fleet. What happens if we agree to their terms? Marcus's expression softened. Humans help rebuild what was broken. They share technology and knowledge. They guide the galaxy toward the same evolution they achieved. And if we disagree, then humans impose order anyway. But without your consent or input. Zethkar's hologram flickered with anger. "That's conquest." "No," Marcus said. "Conquest is what you did to human space. This is intervention. Like stopping children from playing with fire." The debate went on for hours. Some council members argued for resistance, others for negotiation. But Velthara could see the truth in their faces. They were beaten. The galaxy was falling apart, and they had no solutions left. Finally, she called for a vote. All in favor of accepting the human terms, return of all resources taken from human space, formal apology for our actions, and commitment to cooperative governance going forward. Silence filled the chamber. Then one by one hands rose. Even Zethkar's hologram raised its hand, though his face showed defeat rather than acceptance. The vote was unanimous. Marcus nodded. "The humans accept your decision. Prepare for transition." "What kind of transition?" Velthara asked. "To a better way of existing." The human ships began to move. They flowed through space like liquid light, taking positions around every major world in the galaxy. But they didn't attack. Instead, they began to sing. Velthara felt the sound in her bones, her hearts, her mind. It wasn't heard music, but felt harmony. The ships were broadcasting something that touched the deepest levels of consciousness. Across the galaxy, the effects were immediate. On worlds where riots had been raging, people stopped fighting and looked up at the sky in wonder. Pirates abandoned their raids to listen to the impossible symphony. Soldiers laid down their weapons, no longer able to remember why they had been angry. "What are they doing?" Velthara asked. "Showing everyone what peace feels like," Marcus explained. He was glowing now, his human form becoming translucent. Not forcing it on them, just letting them experience it. So they can choose, and if they choose war again, they won't. Once you've felt true peace, violence becomes impossible. It's like trying to choose blindness after you've learned to see. Over the following days, the transformation was remarkable. The galaxy didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became possible. Species that had been enemies for centuries began talking. Trade networks reformed on principles of mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The resource wars ended as humans showed better ways to manage scarcity. Velthara found herself working with representatives she had never imagined cooperating with. The human influence didn't control their minds, but it removed the fear and greed that had made cooperation impossible. "Is this what you always intended?" she asked Marcus during one of their final conversations. The boy, who was now clearly something beyond human, smiled. Humans hoped the Council would choose cooperation willingly. When that didn't happen, they chose to help you evolve anyway. By force? By example. By showing what's possible when intelligent beings put aside primitive competition. Velthara looked out at the restored galaxy. Ships moved peacefully between worlds. Resources flowed where they were needed most. Conflicts were resolved through discussion rather than violence. "Will you stay?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "My purpose was to serve as a bridge during the transition. Now that bridge is no longer needed. What will happen to humanity? They'll continue evolving, exploring realities beyond this one. But they'll always watch over the galaxy they helped create, and someday when the Council species are ready for the next step, humans will be there to guide that transition too." "The next step?" Marcus smiled as his form began to fade. "Evolution doesn't stop. This galaxy is just the beginning." As he vanished, Velthara felt a profound sense of loss and gratitude. The humans had departed without a word 2 years ago, and the Council had thought they could profit from that absence. Instead, they had learned a hard lesson about interdependence and consequence, but they had also learned about forgiveness and second chances. Looking out at the peaceful galaxy around Nexus Prime, Velthara realized that the Council's theft and the consequences that followed had been necessary steps. They had to lose everything to understand what they had really possessed. Humans hadn't just been another species sharing the galaxy. They had been teachers, preparing their students for lessons the students hadn't even known they needed to learn. The humans had departed without a word, and the Council had paid the price for their greed. But in the end, that price had purchased something more valuable than any territory or resource. It had purchased wisdom. And wisdom, Velthara reflected, was the foundation upon which all true civilizations were built. The galaxy was at peace. The humans watched from beyond, patient and proud of the children they had helped raise. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, other young civilizations were probably making the same mistakes the Council had made, preparing for their own lessons in growth and consequence. The cycle would continue as it always had and always would. But now at least the Council understood their place in that cycle. They were no longer scavengers fighting over scraps. They were gardeners learning to tend a galaxy that belonged to all who called it home. The humans had kept their promise. They had come back and they had brought wisdom with them,